Hi, it's Brett Richter. I'm up here at the CPTC in Beausejour, Manitoba. And one of the goals in this production work is that we're trying to bring the sport of champ racing to the public and help them understand things a little bit. Traction is something that most people don't understand because the sport lives and dies on an ice surface. And most snowmobiles simply don't run on ice very well. Yet when you see these sleds at more than 100 miles per hour, there's obviously something to that. With me today is Dustin Wahl, part of the Wahl brothers racing family, and also a former champ racer. Get many victories under your belt as well, right?
Everywhere but here in Beausejour on Sunday.
Wow, well there we go. So that puts Beausejour in its place, I guess. But I've known Dustin for a lot of years, so when we were talking about trying to help you understand the sport better, I called him and said, let's talk about traction one day. And Dustin, he loves the camera, so he was like right on it right away and said, I'd be happy to do that, right?
Absolutely.
So what we've got is a section of track that Dustin brought up from the shop. If you can see on the track, there's many of these studs, correct? But in many different shapes and lengths. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the basically what you're trying to do is get the best stud pattern and try to get as many scratch lines as possible. The goal is to have as many different areas of the ice covered. So that's why the studs are all in different shapes or not shapes, but in different locations on the track. Today it was really warm, so it was over 40 degrees Fahrenheit, so that takes a little bit different studding. Like these here are called chisel studs. They're like a flat face, helps grab the ice a little bit better when it's the ice is softer. But typically, Woody's makes, like these are all Woody's studs in here, and they're just typical studs. There's a length that they have to be. You can't just use any length. So each track, there's two different ones you can run. There's a 106 length track, which takes a shorter stud, and then a 116 length track, which allows a longer stud because the track lug height is different. So, and it just depends on, there's no, I don't know which one's faster or not. That's yet to be proven, but.
Sure. So if this was underneath the sled, which side of this track is driver's right and which is driver's left?
So this is the inside of the track here, and this is on the outside. Now, this is just part of a track that we had, and we brought it in so everyone can see. The faster sleds, as in the Pro Champ class, require more traction than, like, say, the Formula 500 class. Also, there's different rules. The Pro Champ class, you can weld plates onto the bars here on the track clips, and they give a lot more traction, especially on the starting line, so you don't spin and you can get going faster. The Formula 500s can't do it. You got to leave it stock. You can just have the bigger studs. So
about how many studs will run in a champ track?
So the 106 track is 42 bars, and there is roughly about 8 studs per bar. So what's
320?
That? Yep.
340, somewhere in that ballpark?
Yeah, yep. So.
Okay, so if a driver tells you that their sled is loose, what exactly does that mean from a stud perspective?
Basically need to get more of the studs into the track. Obviously there's many different things you can do to change that with the suspension and whatnot. But so if the sled is loose, you need to get more of these picks into the ice so that you can keep the momentum through the corner and off the corner.
So when drivers talk about inevitably hitting dirt in a racetrack, and they talk about losing control or losing traction, is that an impact then where these are getting dull and not having a grip force, or what exactly are they referencing?
Normally when they're talking about that, would be the front end they're losing. The carbides on the front under the skis are like razors. They're 8 and 10 inches long in the Pro Champ class, but when you hit the dirt, it takes that edge off and they can't turn. A lot of times though, it will take the studs out of if there's a rock in the track, because these are just made of steel.
Okay.
So if you hit a rock or something, it's going to bend it over, and that's going to affect that area of the track, and it's not going to dig in. It's very critical, especially like when it's cold out, that they are as sharp as possible to get the most grip on the ice.
So based on what you're saying, I would assume there's somebody usually in each trailer for a champ class that has a responsibility to check the studs after every round. Mm-hmm. Do they sharpen? Do they replace? What do they do?
It just depends on. Some sharpen. There are sharpeners available, but a lot of times they'll just replace them. It's really critical if you're looking for the most traction that the studs are the right length, and there's you want to keep right at that maximum rule. Certain situations when the sled is maybe too hooked up, you're not so concerned about it, but a lot of times you want them to be as long as possible.
And how do you know if your studs are too long? What's happening in there?
Well, there's a gauge that you can buy from Woody's that will go on top of the track lug, and it'll basically just show the height, to make sure that they pass that,
And that's something that tech inspection does at the end of the race?
Yes. So if you're fortunate enough to go to tech at the end of the race, that's pretty much every time they're going to check that, because it's that important that these are the right length.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, we all know the sport's not cheap, but if you put 350 studs in a track, these can't be $1 a piece, right?
No, they're pretty expensive, especially nowadays. They're pretty expensive, so it's best to try save on your equipment as much as possible. So you buy a track, you put the clips on it and stud it. You're looking at probably a few $1,000s in the pro champ class. So it's definitely important to take care of your stuff, and typically they're not gonna go bad unless you run over dirt or
rocks or something,
or hit your tunnel or something like that.
Sure. One final question for you, because I know it's something people ask often. When they come up to the starting line, you'll see the drivers jumping up and down on the back of their machine, and most people, I don't know if they think it's exercise or what exactly they think is going on, but with this piece in our hands, explain exactly what's going on there.
So basically, you're pulling up to the starting line, and the sled is sitting on top of the ice because the picks don't go in far enough. What you're trying to do is you're trying to jump on the sled and drive them down, just like you would, say, a hammer and a nail. Just drive them into the ice and get them into the ice as deep as possible, so when they hit the throttle and they can get the best launch out of the gate as possible.
So if we were watching the start of a race and we saw a long rooster tail coming out from a sled at the starting line, the assumption then is that the picks weren't set?
Correct.
And they just spun right off the line?
Yep. Most of the time when that happens, when it's really warm out, it's really a problem, because getting hold of that warm ice, it's soft and it just breaks apart. A lot of the sleds will just sit there and they'll just spin, and you'll just see a rooster tail coming out, But a lot of the times, just putting some chisels in or that will help grab it and get you going to the first corner.
And obviously, from a safety standpoint, these things are dangerous. So I know that the Pro Champ class, along with many of the other classes, includes something called a tunnel enclosure, right? Mm-hmm. Talk just briefly about that before we wrap this up.
Yeah. So basically, it's like 2.5 inches, the distance that it can be from the tip of this stud to the aluminum that encloses the back of the tunnel. And basically, the goal is to not get somebody sucked up into the track,
Right.
It's fortunately, I raced many years and never ever had any issues, but unfortunately have friends that had issues, with this, and you get all these studs clawing away at you. It's not good. So no. As safe as we can be around these, it's the best thing to do.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for your knowledge. Wahl Brothers is a great resource for people that are looking for information on studding tracks and purchasing the right equipment. We thank Woody's, too, as one of the sponsors for the Pro Star Cup Tour, for bringing their traction products to the market and helping us out. We'll bring you more tech tips here as the weekend moves on.